How you doing, guys? Today we are talking wiring and the wires for the tractor. There's a lot more wires than I anticipated. After I did the schematic drawing, which I'll show you in a second, I didn't think I was going to have as many wires as I do, but they're all needed. There's not much I can do. As you can see, I got a number of wires coming up through the tower in order to go to the dash panel. We'll talk about that in a second. And I pretty much have the entire box wired up and ready to go. As you can see, I started making the harness itself, or putting the harness together. I've run basically all the wires out of this box. Let me see if I can get in here. There we go. From the box to the dash, and essentially, you know, let me just show you. I got the main battery cable, the hot cable coming from the battery in the back. It's right here. I made that up. It's going to go to this post. I've made the battery cable for the starter. Comes up and around, and it's all hooked up. And I tested it for I should say I've tested all my circuits for continuity. I did put power to my relay right here in order to jump the circuit to make sure it worked, and everything seemed to work fine. So basically, you know, in this position, I'm going to have the main battery cable come to this post. I do have a couple other jumpers off the main post. One is to feed the hot power to the relay, which ultimately triggers the fuse panel, so I have that. And then this big red wire right here, that is the main wire that goes to the ignition switch. So we got a big heavy power wire. These will both have 25 amp fuses in the holders, so that's all that is going to come off. Obviously I have my rectifier wires. These two wires come from the actual stator. That's the I guess the return line to the ignition switch. What else do we have? Then over here I have a series of, just trying to get a little better. I have a series of wires coming off the fuse panel. The top one's going to be the fuel pump. The next one right here will be the lights, and then right here is the cigarette lighter, because I am putting the original wheel horse cigarette lighter back on the tractor. Essentially all those wires come through this harness right here and up, and I haven't, I'll get over on the other side. I haven't really neatened them up too much, but it's really hard to see because it's dark, but I will be neatening all that up in order to get this all nice and tidy, so when it goes into this panel, into the dash panel, it'll look nice and clean. I am going to get once I'm all done and got everything all set up, I am going to get one of those wire looms and just cover this all up. So this will be just one black wire looking thing right up to the tower, so that way it's all nice and clean and won't have a menagerie of wires thrown everywhere, even though there are wires everywhere. The battery cable obviously will be all snaked in there too, so all of that will be covered up. When it comes to the grounds in the dash panel, I made this little aluminum block. I drilled it for 1024 screws, so that way I can screw each ground wire to a block. Essentially, I have the generator light that needs a ground, so that'll go there. I have two switches with the switches are lit, so when you click the circuit on, the light on the switch on the dash panel will turn on, so they need a ground. So there's the two spots for the switch grounds, and then this ground here is for the ignition switch itself. So all my grounds are going to come right off the panel and real neatly right to this grounding block that I made out of a piece of aluminum. And that should neaten all that up, keep it nice and clean. This should be all nice and open back here. There shouldn't be like a huge mess. I'm going to try to keep the spaghetti mess to a minimum if I can. So that's the plan at this point in time for that. I got to put the dash panel together with all of the accessories, meaning the ignition switch, the light switch, the fuel pump switch, the lighter, and the generator light. I did add these little red LED bulbs to the back of the tractor. I just made this quick little bracket out of aluminum. Obviously there's some wires that go along with that. The whites are the grounds, the blacks are the hots. When I put the fender pan on, all of that will be completely covered. You will not see those lights. And the reason for that is when I click the lights on, I just want it to glow red on the back hitch. So I think it just give a nice effect. They're LEDs, they draw no power, so it's not like a big huge deal. This is the main power wire from the switch off the dash panel to turn the lights on and off. So that's all in place. This wire here, which still needs to be run to the front, that is my power wire for my headlights. Okay, and now the headlights are kind of interesting because I got them off eBay. They're from an old farm tractor of some sort, and they're like a dual light, which is kind of weird. It had like a little light on the inside, and then the standard white bulb that you see on tractors. So, but the original light bulbs, the back glass is red. So when you turn on this light, okay, or this bulb, it backlights the bulb itself red. It's really cool. And then obviously this wire here turns on the white. So the way I'm wiring it is this. On the dash there will be a switch. When I click the switch on the dash, the two headlights will glow red and the rear tail light that I just showed you will glow red. So it'll look kind of cool. I think it's going to look pretty cool. And then if I want the main lights, or the main headlights to come on, the white, the bright white, there was these little switches on the back of the lights. I didn't add this. This was how they came. So you'll have to individually turn the lights on, because there's a switch on the back of this one too. You can see it right there. You'll have to individually turn the lights on to go like headlights, which I really don't care because I'm not going to drive around at night too much, and even if I'm at night, it's going to look a lot cooler with the lights red instead of like regular white headlights. And again, these are LED bulbs, so we're going to be drawing theoretically no power. So when I flip the switch on the dash for the lights, all the red LED lights will come on. And it won't look like, you know, it won't look bad. It's going to look pretty cool because it's just going to be simple. All right, so that's that. The fuel pump, like I said, I'll have a switch on the dash. The way I'm wiring that is when you go to accessory on the ignition switch, the accessory wire from the ignition switch goes to my relay. So the relay will click on, and then that will feed the power to the fuse panel. Then from there, I'll have a toggle switch on the dash, a lit toggle switch on the dash, which will, you know, so accessory, flip the fuel pump on, the electric fuel pump will turn on, pull the choke, hit the starter, it should start right up. And then if I want to run the carburetor dry, I can always just click off my fuel pump. The engine will run until it runs out of fuel. One of the things that I do, especially at this point in time, is obviously I make these wires super long, come all the way out, so that way when I finally get the dash panel up in place, I know I'll have plenty of wire. If I need to move it around, want to go this way, that way, I'll have plenty of wire to do what I want in order to keep it nice and clean. But I label them just so I know, like this one here is access, so this is the accessory wire. We just happened to be talking about that. What's this one? This is the, what's this? That is the, oh, those are the lights. Then we have, oh, there's the hot for the fuel pump. And then this is the starter. This is what? Oh, this is the hot for the lights. What the hell was this one for? Oh, this is for the, that one was for the starter generator light. So, in a nutshell, that's what I've done. Now, I should say, all of the connections you see here, oops, all the connections, all these little crimp connectors. I like to, let me get this thing to focus for us. Come on, there it is. I like to, rip all the plastic off the crimp connectors. They just look horrible when you look at a wiring job and you got all those little plastic everything. So I pull all the plastic off, and then I'll crimp them on. I soldered all the joints, and then I put a little piece of heat shrink tubing over the top of that. That way the wiring is all nice and clean. You know, it looks good. There's no stupidity, so to speak, going on. So that's all set. So in a nutshell, that's how I do the wiring. Take the plastic off, crimp them on, solder them, and then put a piece of heat shrink over it. So that way it's all nice and clean, and you know it's going to be stable. And then lastly, before I start any wiring, this is what I do. I know it's pretty OCD, but it does make life a lot easier. I mean, yeah, we'll just do it on the Senior. Why not? Got to put the Senior to work for something. But in a nutshell, I did this wiring diagram before I actually did any wiring. And as you can see, we have the ignition switch, starter solenoid, starter, here's the coil from the mag, the stator, battery, lights, fuel pump, lighter, everything is there. Even the generator light's in there. And then this is an exploded view of the relay and where all the contacts need to go and need to be. I find that this helps me out so that way I don't forget anything. It helps me plan where I want to run the wiring so it just doesn't look like a big huge spaghetti mess. And then over here I do like kind of try to figure out what circuits are going to run, like, you know, in the off position of the ignition switch we have the ground and the magneto, so we know so that way when we turn the switch off, the magneto, or the coil, whatever you want to call it, grounds out, the engine dies. In the run position, we're going to have the battery power and the accessory, which is exactly what you want. You want the battery power coming into the switch, and you want the accessory wire to be hot because you want to run the fuel pump. You know, if you want to just run the lights without the engine running, you can do that. And if you want to light up your marble, that thing, the lighter will work also. And then in the start position, we have the battery, the accessory, and the starter, which is exactly what we want. We want the battery because we got to feed power to the switch, the accessory because we want the fuel pump to stay on, and then when we go into the start position, the starter will get, or the solenoid pole will get juice, kick the solenoid that kicks the starter. At the same time, the generator light will turn on. So in other words, when I go into the start mode and call power to the solenoid, the generator light will come on, and then when I release the key to go into the run position, the generator light will go off. The reason for that is I don't have a starter generator on this tractor. It's just a piggyback starter, as you know, and there's no generator because we have the stator, because it's the Magnum motor. Whew. So there it is, guys. When it comes to wiring, I try to keep it as detailed as possible because, as you know, once you have a wiring problem or a short, it can just be a complete nightmare. Trying to hunt down the short, trying to figure out what the problem is, this just makes it a lot easier. And then making good, solid connections that are going to last. Solder your joints, heat shrink, and here comes my garbage man. All right, guys, have a good day. I'll talk to you later.